The Orium crown hung like a jewel in the vacuum, an orbital cathedral plated in gold and humming softly with the arrogance of old power. Inside, everything gleamed. Light pooled off polished stone walls, dripped from chandeliers of hovering ion crystal, and sparkled across tables set with intergalactic delicacies. Roasted sky meat from Zalin Prime, fermented starglow fruit, and a diplomatic offering that looked suspiciously like a pulsing, still-breathing heart. Catherine Volnova sat at the edge of it all, legs crossed, tea in hand. She wore a simple, dark suit, nothing extravagant. A silver pin shaped like a crow clung to her lapel, and her hair was tied in a low, clean knot at the nape of her neck. Calm, patient, watching. She didn't blink much. That unsettled them. Around her, delegates of a dozen species performed the old pageantry of peace. The Zixari shimmered in mirrored robes, twitching their mandibles. The Zarine floated like jellyfish over throne cushions. And at the head of the grand table, reclining in imperial laziness, was the Galactic king himself, Vargax, 4 of the Arksari Dominion, 9 feet tall, horns lacquered, skin like obsidian, cracked with red lava glow. He raised a chalice, filled with green fire, and boomed, "To peace." The room echoed the toast. Some clapped. One of the Krinth even wept. Catherine smiled politely and sipped her jasmine tea. "Ambassador Volnova," the king said, lounging forward on his throne of bone metal. "Is it true what they say of your people? That you resolved 37 wars with mere words?" Cat placed her cup down gently on its saucer. "Only 33 with words, your grace. The remaining 4 required other forms of punctuation." Chuckles rippled, thin and unsure. A Tarkan diplomat whispered, "Punctuation? Was that a threat?" "Human idiom," someone muttered. "Ignore it. They do that." King Vargax bared his teeth, more amused than insulted. "Tell me, human, why send a woman as fragile as you to a summit of monsters?" "Perhaps to remind you," Cat said smoothly, "that humanity does not fear monsters. We raise them." For a moment, silence lingered, velvety and heavy. A single drop of syrup fell from a glass spoon into a crystal saucer, loud as thunder. Then the king laughed. It was a cruel, echoing sound that bounced around the chamber like a thrown blade. "You amuse me, diplomat, but amusements break easy." Cat tilted her head. "Only if you strike first." He studied her long and slow, as though trying to decide whether to devour her outright or wait for a more satisfying opportunity. A few alien dignitaries avoided her gaze now. One elder, Th Rock of the 6 Eyes, stared at her with something closer to dread. The old ones always knew first. They'd seen what humans had done when cordiality failed. Behind her, a minor ambassador from Delian adjusted his translation earbud and whispered, "Why does she keep talking in riddles?" "She's human," hissed another. "They're all riddles. They cook with fire for fun." Vargax clapped his claws together, signaling the music to start, a droning hum that made bones itch. Dancers floated in, wearing spider silk and gas veils. An alien bard began playing a stringless harp made of ion fields and static pulses. Catherine leaned back in her chair and studied the ceiling, intricate carvings of former peace summits, filled with all the lies of history. A voice buzzed softly in her ear. "Texas." Her assistant AI synced to a hidden neurochip in her skull. "Ma'am," he drawled in a thick southern accent. "Might be worth noting that 2 of the waitstaff are carrying antimatter injectors disguised as decanters. Probability of an assassination attempt tonight, 81%. Cat smiled to herself. "I told you this would be festive," she whispered behind the rim of her teacup. Tex hummed. "One of M's wearing a suit from Earth. Poor tailoring. Must have killed the real human. Should I send in the backup?" "Not yet. Let's see what flavor of betrayal this is." Vargax stood, and the hall quieted. He raised a hand, and holographic constellations bloomed in the air around him. "Peace," he said grandly, "is a lie we tell until the knives are sharp enough." The aliens roared in approval. Catherine rose slowly from her seat. "Then perhaps, your grace," she said, her voice soft but cutting. "You should know, our blades come pre-sharpened." A hush. Even the ion harp faltered. Vargax stepped down from his dais. You speak as if humans are dangerous, child. You are but fireflies flickering in the dusk. Then perhaps, Cat murmured, you've never stared long enough at the dark. He circled her, tail dragging. And yet, we allowed your people into the Peace Council. Why send someone like you? Because, she said, turning to face him squarely, you're not the first to mistake me for polite. He snarled, mocking, not afraid. You think I fear you? No, she replied. I think you don't fear me. That's the mistake. She stepped back, offering a bow so graceful it could have come from ballet or war. The king turned to his guards. Escort our guest to her quarters. Make sure she's comfortable. His voice was honey dipped in acid. The guards saluted, clawed hands brushing curved armor. Catherine didn't resist. She allowed herself to be led out of the chamber, through cold steel halls lined with flickering banners of every galactic house. The guards behind her spoke in low tones, thinking her unable to hear. She smells like perfume. That's jasmine. Soft. Weak. No scars. No fear. No idea, she thought. They opened a door of polished obsidian. A suite awaited her, lavish, perfumed, and watched. Always watched. She stepped inside, let the door slide shut, and exhaled deeply. Tex buzzed again. Ma'am, do I assume you're declining the poisoned grapes on the tray? Correct. How about the wine? Also poisoned. Understood. Want me to activate the mirror trap early? No. Let them believe I sleep. Let them come. She turned to the tall, ornate mirror on the wall. 3 tiny red dots blinked at the edges. Surveillance. She smiled at herself, then said, with syrupy sweetness, lovely room. I'll be sure to leave a review. And she winked, right into the camera. Outside the station, far beyond its shield dome, 20 small, black ships hung in dead silence, cloaked, powered down, waiting. They bore no flags, no transmissions. Just a single encoded ripple, sent out every 37 seconds. 3 pulses in, they would wake. 6 pulses in, they would lock targets. 9 pulses in, they would erase the crown of the galaxy from its own sky. Catherine Volnova, known to a few as the Baba Yaga, took off her shoes, folded her coat, brushed her teeth with a disposable nanobrush, lay down on the bed without worry. Tex whispered, I've intercepted a new order. King's private channel. They plan to move at 3 o'clock Galactic Standard. Quick, silent. No public mess. Of course, she said. Vargax always was a coward wrapped in theater. She pulled a thin data chip from behind her ear and slipped it into the base of her wristwatch. Her heartbeat slowed. Breath deepened. Should I ready the countermeasures? Tex asked. No, she whispered. Then paused. Smiled. Let them come. I'll be having tea. At 3 o'clock, the Orium crown would go dark. And in the silence, in the deep shadows of the floating halls, something worse than monsters would move. Something human. Something smiling. The Orium crown dimmed after midnight, its lavish lights shifting to a soft violet hue, what the station AI politely called rest cycle ambience. In reality, it was the color of lullabies for tyrants. Everything here was curated to soothe the powerful. Even the shadows were symmetrical. Catherine Volnova, lying in the bed she'd never intended to sleep in, opened one eye. The scent of the room had changed. Jasmine and ozone, yes, but now tinged with oil, and something too metallic to belong in any diplomatic suite. She rose in silence. Tex's voice entered her mind like a sleepy drawl. They're in the walls, ma'am. 3 in the air duct. 2 above the ceiling panel. 1 on the floor. Fella's gonna be mighty upset when he finds a landmine under his knees. Catherine walked barefoot across the marble tiles, paused at the tray of night refreshments the king's attendants had laid out for her. Fruit that shimmered. A carafe of crimson wine, steaming faintly in the cool air. She picked up a grape with gloved fingers and rolled it under the scanner built into her earring. A soft chime confirmed what she already knew. Poisoned, she murmured. Tex hummed. Old recipe. Paralyzes the throat muscles first. Real nasty if you're trying to scream. Thoughtful, she said. They want the last thing I taste to be sweet. Well, Tex offered dryly. The Arksari have always been big on presentation. Catherine sat by the tall window, watching stars swirl slowly in the glass reflection. She'd memorized every constellation around this station hours ago. Even the absence of Earth in the visible sky was intentional. A message, you're alone. The Arksari had a taste for games masquerading as tradition. Every curtain had been embroidered with her species' placement in the hierarchy, 54th. Right beneath the Ugak fungus colonies, who at least made good wine. She reached under the bed and retrieved the gift box she'd hidden there earlier. It had been hand-delivered by the king's servants upon arrival, wrapped in black velvet, sealed with a molten crest. Inside, an obsidian figurine of a kneeling woman, head bowed, hands broken off. Subtlety was not a requirement for the king's hospitality. Footsteps outside. Tex's voice dipped into a near whisper. They're lining up now. 5 hostiles in the corridor. Heat dampeners active. No insignia. All wearing Imperial tech, custom silencers. No record of M in station logs. Ghost team, she murmured. Yup. She stood slowly, pressing 2 fingers against the skin behind her right ear. Her pupils flickered, iris shifting from green to steel gray. The walls of her suite shimmered as she activated a low-level phase distortion field, just enough to blur light, to turn truth into rumor. She moved to the mirror, tapped the base twice. The glass folded inward like silk. Behind it, a weapons rack rose silent and elegant. No guns, no plasma, just knives. 9 of them, each named, each balanced to her exact grip. She chose 3. Then, deliberately, she slipped her heels back on, returned to the chair, and crossed her legs again, the same as she had at the summit table. Let them find her sitting. Let them wonder. The door whispered open. 6 assassins entered, cloaked in obsidian armor etched with runes of honor. Ironic, considering the job. Their leader scanned the room, confused. She was right there, unarmed, waiting. He took 1 step forward. Ambassador Catherine Volnova, by decree of the Galactic Crown, you are to be relocated. I decline the hospitality, she said. He blinked. She smiled. But thank you. It's been enlightening. The first blade took him in the throat before his helmet finished resealing. The second landed in the chest of the guard to his left, dead center through reinforced plating. He folded like a puppet whose strings had been slashed. The third tried to raise a sonic pulse, but Kat was already beside him. Her gloved hand snapped his wrist, disarmed him, and used his own weapon to short-circuit his neural brace. The last 3 hesitated. That was all she needed. A flick of her wrist, and her final blade whirled across the room, cutting through throat and visor, embedding in the steel wall behind them with a final clang. When silence returned, it smelled of ozone and warm blood. Kat exhaled, straightened her collar. Tex whistled. Elegant. Remind me never to play poker with you. Noted, she said. She turned the room's ambient lights back to white, just as more footsteps echoed outside the suite, this time slower, less arrogant. The backup had arrived. She waited. The new figure at the door didn't enter. Instead, the glass wall behind her shimmered, and a holographic projection of King Vargax materialized, larger than life. His eyes burned like 2 suns melting through dusk. Such aggression, he purred. Such cowardice, she replied. I offer you luxury, and you respond with murder. You offered me poisoned fruit and blades in the dark. He laughed, deep and proud. A test, dear diplomat. And you passed. Impressively. I don't take exams from tyrants. He stepped closer. Even as a projection, his presence felt hot, heavy. You humans, you speak in riddles and walk as if the stars belong to you. You think your defiance is bravery. No, she said. It's memory. We remember everything you've done. Every envoy vanished. Every colony sabotaged. Every offer laced with malice. He snarled, nostrils flaring. You're ants in a garden of giants. And yet, she said softly, you flinch when we walk near your throne. The projection flickered, then steadied. You were sent here to sign peace. Instead, you spilled blood. She stepped forward, letting her words drip slow and venomous. "You tried to erase me like a typo in a treaty. Is that what this is about?" he asked, voice slick with mockery. "Hurt feelings?" "No," she said. "It's about justice. We offered peace. You answered with knives." He chuckled again, quieter now. "You think this changes anything? That some clever woman with cutlery frightens a throne that spans 50 systems?" Catherine's gaze didn't waver. "It should." "Why?" he sneered. "Because I'm not alone." For the first time, something shifted in the king's eyes. A flicker. Doubt? Memory? She tapped her ring twice. Below the station, in silent space, 20 human ships powered on. Engines purred. Lights flared. The black signal had been sent. Still, she didn't look away from him. "You should have known, Vargax. We never send a lamb without a pack watching." He stared, then leaned in, voice dark and quiet. "You came here to make us fear you." "No," she whispered. "We came here to see if we still feared ourselves." The hologram crackled once more, and then cut out. The air turned cold. Tex piped in. "Well, that wasn't awkward at all." She didn't reply. She walked to the body of the first attacker and retrieved her blade, cleaned it with the hem of his cloak. Then she turned to the security lens above the doorway, still blinking red. She looked straight into it and said, "I accept your hospitality. Now let me return the favor." The station lights flickered once, then twice. All over the Orium crown, hidden locks disengaged. Silent doors opened in the lower maintenance decks. Access codes rewritten. Ventilation rerouted. Human fingerprints were everywhere now. The trap was sprung. In the bowels of the Orium crown, lights flickered like candle flames on the edge of extinction. Engineers scrambled. Systems glitched. One corridor's gravity reversed for 11 seconds, just long enough to leave 2 Arksari soldiers vomiting on the ceiling. Catherine Volnova strolled past them without breaking stride, the hem of her dark coat swaying like a shadow that had remembered how to walk. She moved through the underworks of the station as though returning home. No hesitation. No misstep. Every turn she took felt inevitable, as if her boots had been drawn here by a magnetic pull older than memory. Tex whispered in her ear. "Sabotage complete. Comms blackout is holding across 7 decks. Their long-range relays gone quiet. They don't know it yet, but they're already cut off from the throne world." "Good," she replied calmly. "Keep us blind to them. Let them believe they still see." The hall twisted. The architecture down here was ancient, built long before Vargax had claimed it. The walls still bore the etchings of the Empire before, strange, insectoid glyphs half buried beneath imperial propaganda banners. Catherine trailed her fingers across the stone as she passed, as if greeting ghosts. At the intersection of 2 maintenance corridors, she paused. 3 Arksari guards were stationed here, lounging. One held a shock lance. Another had his helmet off, chewing something red and fibrous. They barely looked up when she appeared. The third, a younger brute, laughed when he saw her. "Diplomat? Did you get lost on your way to the ambassador's wine bath?" "I'm where I need to be," she replied. He rose, towering over her. "Orders are to keep this section restricted." "Are they? Who do you think you are?" he demanded. She stepped forward, eyes steady. "Do you know what they call me on Naren 6? He scoffed. "They call me the ghost that negotiated the ashes. I once walked into a civil war and walked out with every warlord saluting." The second guard stood now too. "Pretty stories. Ask the Zareth clans what happened when they tried to breach Earth's southern defense ring," she continued. "The bodies floated for weeks. They say one woman gave the order. They don't say her name. They only whisper it." "And what do you call yourself?" the first guard growled. Catherine smiled gently. "Baba Yaga." The moment cracked open. The second guard froze. The third took a step back. The first, who had laughed, suddenly went pale. "No," he whispered. "That's just a human myth. All good monsters begin as myths," she said. Then moved. It was not a fight. It was a lesson. A brutal, fluid reminder that precision was more terrifying than strength. The first guard never touched his weapon. The second slumped against the wall, neck broken at a clean angle. The third dropped to his knees before her blade touched skin. "Please," he gasped, voice trembling. "I have hatchlings. 4. Twins." She nodded and left him breathing. Behind her, he didn't move. No one ever moved again when they saw what the Baba Yaga chose to spare. Catherine turned down a hall, passed through a biometric lock she'd overwritten hours ago. Inside, the chamber was cold, lined with archival crystals and star maps etched in old glass. Waiting for her was Th Rock of the Six Eyes. He was ancient, bent, and scaled with time, his ceremonial robes hanging like a second skin. His eyes, all six, glistened with a mix of sorrow and fear. "I knew," he said quietly, "the moment you entered the crown. I could feel the frost." She didn't deny it. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "Not alone." "I didn't." Th Rock gestured to the star map, still glowing softly in the dark. "You do not have to remind me of what humanity is capable of. I remember Epsilon 13. I remember the silence." "I'm not here to remind you," she said. "I'm here to give you a choice." He sat heavily on a bench carved from meteorite. "You think I have choices left? You still breathe. That counts." A long silence. Finally, he asked, "Do they know who you are? Vargax and his hounds?" "Not yet," she said. "But they'll guess soon enough. I warned them not to provoke Earth. I said there are no small wounds in your kind, only long memories." And they answered with poison and death squads. "They always do." She looked at him then, not as a weapon, but as a woman, tired but unbroken. "I didn't come to start a war," she said. "But they made the mistake of trying to end me in silence." "They've written their own epitaph," Tatrok murmured. A flicker of memory rose unbidden behind her eyes. A snowy forest. A little girl with frost-bitten fingers, gripping a rifle taller than she was. Her breath was fog. Her first kill had been a wolf. The second wasn't. She shook the memory away. "I need access to the old transport grid beneath the crown," she said. "Before sunrise." Th Rock didn't argue. He simply lifted his hand and passed her a crystal key. "I have always admired the restraint of your people. You pretend to be like the others. But restraint is not weakness. It is calculation." She took the key. "There is still time to avoid extinction." "You're speaking to the wrong species," he said. "We've already chosen pride." She left him in the archives, watching dying stars spin above a map that had outlived empires. As she descended deeper into the crown's ancient substructure, text pinged softly. "Just got an update, ma'am. The king's private guards are mobilizing. They're wearing your face on targeting scans now. Broadcast level 1 clearance. Execute on site." "They always wait until morning to hunt witches," she murmured. "Then it's going to be a long night." She entered the forgotten tunnels, flooded with green emergency light, echoing with distant machinery and the slow hiss of air vents older than most species on the council. Her boots splashed through shallow puddles. Mold grew here. The scent was honest. Here, away from the politics and crystal platters, she could think. She removed one glove, revealing a tattoo on the back of her hand. 3 crows, flying in opposite directions. An old Earth symbol. Few understood it. No one survived long enough to ask. She pressed her hand against a rusted console. It recognized her DNA, flickered to life, and unlocked the dormant uplink node she'd seeded 2 days ago. A low pulse traveled through the floor, a single beat of ancient drums. Text confirmed it. The black signal is now live on all civilian frequencies. No encryption. Every species will hear it. "Good," she whispered. Outside, human ships were repositioning silently. Inside, the crown trembled. She walked to a window where the stars still burned. The sight of them never stopped hurting. Humans had reached them so late, battered, divided, desperate, and yet, within 2 centuries, they had become the one species others feared to provoke without cause. Because unlike others, humans had nothing sacred but each other. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a child's drawing. Faded, crumpled. A house. A sun. A woman with a black coat. It had been given to her years ago by a child rescued from a war zone. The child had died 2 days later. Airstrike. Wrong coordinates. A civilized misfire. Catherine didn't cry anymore. Instead, she remembered. Every name. Every failure. Every promise broken. That was the real source of human power. Not rage, not pride. But memory. It hardened. It calcified. It whispered to the blood. She folded the drawing, tucked it back into her coat, and turned toward the access lift. Text buzzed. 3 Arksari elite units headed your way, full armor, claws out. Catherine smiled faintly. Let them come. Tex hesitated. You all right, ma'am? I just remembered who I am. She stepped into the lift. The door hissed shut. Gears ground. Ascent initiated. Outside, stars shifted. The crown prepared for dawn. And across 1,000 listening posts in the galaxy, the black signal played on loop, a melody of silence, interrupted by thunder. The Orium crown never truly slept, but now it stirred like a beast waking to the smell of its own blood. Alarm tones pulsed low, muffled by pride and delay. Somewhere in the upper decks, a control officer noticed the echolag in their own transmission loop. Somewhere else, a janitorial drone stopped mid-cleaning, its code overwritten by a command it had no words for. Catherine Volnova rose through the station's central lift, coat streaked with ash and oil. Her eyes, once the color of frostbitten moss, had shifted to slate. She watched herself reflected in the mirrored surface of the lift wall, calm, still, deadly. The soft chime of arrival sounded. She stepped out onto the upper diplomatic platform, the same place where Vargax had toasted peace not 2 days ago. The same polished floor, the same throne. Only now, it felt like a mausoleum before the funeral began. Tex's voice buzzed, clipped and brisk. All black ships are in position. Orbital targeting acquired. Command nodes locked. Casualties, she asked. 0. You haven't given the command yet. Let's try to keep it that way. At least for us. Across the wide marble floor, a crowd gathered, slowly, uneasily. Delegates. Soldiers. Attendants who hadn't fled. Many still wore ceremonial robes. One Zixari dignitary clutched his goblet like a shield. Catherine walked into their midst without invitation. Some of them whispered her name. Not the one on her documents. The other one. The buried one. The one that had been a rumor since before most of them were born. Baba Yaga. Not a human. Not a woman. A force. A reckoning. King Vargax stood at the far end of the platform, flanked by elite guards in black and gold armor, visors drawn. His molten eyes locked on hers with a mixture of contempt and calculation. You've caused quite the mess, he said, voice smooth but strained. You tried to erase a diplomat in the night, she replied. You should have expected a reply. He gestured to the chaos behind her. This is your reply? Terrorism. This is the sound of restraint dying, she said. He growled softly. I gave you a place at this table. I allowed your kind to breathe in our courts. And you bring knives into the cradle of peace. You set the cradle on fire. I simply made sure the flames reached the ceiling. She advanced another step. One of his guards flinched. It was that kind of silence, the kind that made twitching feel like confession. Vargax lifted a hand and snapped his claws. Holographic displays spun to life above them. Images of the human black ships in orbit. Sleek, dark, silent. Dozens of them. Unflagged, unglowing. You think this scares me? The king said. No, she answered. That's the mistake. He glared. You think we'll surrender to a few shadow fleets? We are Arksari, born in stars. We carved our empire when your species was still throwing rocks. Catherine's voice was low, but carried like a judge's gavel. And yet you flinch when we speak plainly. I flinch at insults. You flinch at truth. He barked a laugh. Truth? You call this truth? You think your kind are protectors? You're parasites, scratching at borders you didn't build. We built ourselves, she said. We climbed from fire and war. We shaped every scar into armor. We don't need your thrones. Then why come at all? He snapped. Why sit at our table? Because we hoped, she said, and for a brief moment, her voice softened truly. "We hope that maybe, just maybe, you wouldn't choose the same path. That you'd see us as something more than a threat." "And when we didn't," he growled. Her stare hardened. "Then we remembered who we are." Tex chimed in gently, cutting through the tension. "Ma'am, orders are queued. Awaiting confirmation." Catherine didn't look away from Vargax. "There's still time. Stand down. Admit what you did. Release the footage of the assassination attempt. Hand over your war tribunal, and we walk away with nothing but memory." Vargax's eyes narrowed. "You want us to kneel?" "I want you to survive." A beat passed. Then another. He smiled, cold and regal. "No." She exhaled slowly. "Then we bury peace." With a single word, quiet as a breath, she said, "Begin." In orbit, the first black ship moved. The Crown's comms blacked out. Station defenses flickered and died. One by one, the diplomatic platforms went dark. No explosions. Not yet. Just silence. The kind of silence that hums in your bones. Delegates panicked. Several fled. One fainted. And still, Catherine stood. Vargax raised a claw. His guards stepped forward, weapons humming to life. "Arrest her," he said. Catherine didn't move. From the shadows behind her, for humans emerged. No sound, no ceremony. Each wore unmarked gray. Each held weapons older than the war they were about to prevent. The guards hesitated. Everyone had heard stories. One guard turned his head slightly. "She's not supposed to have an escort." Another one whispered, "That's Task Force Winter. They're not real." Catherine said nothing, because the truth didn't need her to defend it anymore. Vargax's voice trembled with sudden anger. "This is a diplomatic summit." "Not anymore," she said. He lunged. Too slow. Her hand moved. A gleam of metal. A small device pressed into her palm. Pulse grenade. She dropped it between them. White light flashed. Everyone screamed. Except her. By the time the blindness cleared, Vargax was on the floor, claw to his temple, groaning. Her boot pressed to his chest. He looked up, dazed. "You're a monster." "No," she whispered. "I'm what monsters fear when they dream." He tried to rise. She let him. Tex's voice came again. "Incoming message from Earth Command. Your line is open." She tapped her wrist. A projection shimmered in the air. An older man in a dark green uniform. Gray hair swept back. Admiral Jericho. Earth's Shadow Admiral. The one they never put on broadcast. "Catherine," he said. "Status." "Crown is contained," she replied. "Hostile leadership neutralized. No major loss of non-combatant life." He nodded. "Authorization for full broadcast granted." She glanced at Vargax. "Any last words before we share your lies with the galaxy?" His mouth opened. Closed. He had nothing. She turned. Tex cued the transmission. Across hundreds of systems, the truth began to stream. Footage of the assassination order. Logs of intercepted poison shipments. Private recordings of the King's own commands to frame Earth as aggressors. By the time the truth finished playing, the Council would never be the same. Neither would the galaxy. Catherine turned back once. Vargax was being restrained now, his guards unsure whether to protect or distance themselves. She looked at him without hate, without satisfaction. Just resolve. "You taught us something," she said quietly. "You taught us that peace without respect is a cage. That's a lesson we won't forget." She walked toward the platform's edge, where the stars hung like a promise. The delegates parted before her like mist. The silence followed. Tex's voice was soft. "Do we leave now?" "Soon." She stopped, looked over her shoulder. The banners of the Arksari still hung proudly, shimmering gold, stitched with conquest. She raised a hand, snapped her fingers. One by one, the banners disintegrated into ash. Below the station, the black ship slowly peeled away, like sharks gliding from still water. Catherine spoke one last time before leaving the chamber. "We did not come for war, but we are what answers war when peace is slain." And then she was gone, leaving the echo of her steps and the legend of her name.